Hello everyone. I know it's been a long time since I've done a full-length video like this. I've been traveling and sick and so on. So now here I am back in Canada, and I thought I would take the opportunity. I've got my video camera fixed and I got some time, so I would make another video, kind of an Ask a Monk video, because this is a question I've been asked a lot lately, and I guess I'm always asked a lot, and it's often a question I don't answer. It's the question about karma and people's inability to understand or accept karma, and or really understand how it works. So this video is meant to address that. Hopefully it will do an adequate job. The first thing we have to understand about karma is that it, like everything else, well, first of all we have to understand what karma is in a Buddhist context, because the word karma is actually a Sanskrit word. It's a word that was used by the Hindu Brahmins, and it's used in the Upanishads, and most originally it's used in the Vedas. Now in the Vedas, the Vedas are a religious text that the Hindus still respect and revere, but they're a text that was originated with a group of people called the Aryans, who were horse-riding nomads, and anyway, their understanding of karma, meaning action, the word simply means action, was that when you performed a certain action with the body or with speech, there was somehow a power to it. Now, even in the Vedas, there wasn't really a belief or understanding that some result would come from it. Simply that the action was important, was sacred, and was a part of their religious activity. I mean, there were even groups in India performing these rituals up until like the 1970s who understood it to just be important as a ritual practice, not necessarily because it brought one to heaven or to enlightenment or so on. So there was this very ritualistic idea of karma, and even up into the Buddha's time, there were groups who in India who believed this, that the gods or even just it was a part of nature that certain actions certain physical or verbal actions had karmic potency, or had some sort of potency to them, that when performed perhaps gave good results, or were simply the required action of religious individuals. And so people would have to hire or enlist the Brahmins, these priests, to perform these rituals at certain periods during their life. In marriage or whatever, they would have to have certain rituals in order to ensure the success of their marriage. You might think, like in certain religious traditions, when you get married, you're supposed to break glass, or you're supposed to throw rice or so on at someone's marriage. So these are examples of karma that goes according to this sort of belief. So in Buddhist tradition, karma is something quite different, and in fact you might say that the Buddha denied this whole idea of karma, of action, as having any potency. In fact, it's quite clear according to the Buddha's teaching that there is no potency to physical or verbal action. The only thing that is karmically potent is intention. So whether it's an action that is performed intentionally, or a speech that is made intentionally, or simply a mental act that is based on some intention, so some volition, some idea of wanting something, of liking something or disliking something, some fixed idea or intention in the mind has karmic potency, or that has the potential to bring, in this case, bring happiness or bring suffering, to have a result that is either beneficial or harmful. So the point being that if you, according to Buddhism, if you were to step on an ant without knowing that the ant was there, there's no karmic potency to that act in particular. Now, if you're running around mindlessly, you might say that there's some karmic potency to being mindless, for example. But you wouldn't be responsible for killing insects that you step on, but you might be responsible in a general sense for being negligent. So this is also in accordance with the law of most civilized countries, where it requires some mental volition to charge someone, but it can also be seen as being negligent. So this is considered to be a generally karmically potent action. Now, the point being here that according to Buddhism, as with everything in Buddhism, karma is experience, is based on experience, is based on our moment-to-moment interaction with reality. It's not based on belief or theory or some magical property that exists in the universe. Karma is not something that is unexplainable, that's like God that somehow exists in the world, and yet it's completely just and cause and effect based, because it deals with moment-to-moment interactions of mind states. So kind of in the way as you might think of how cause and effect works on a physical level, karma works on a mental level. So when one particle hits another particle, it causes a chain reaction. It causes a reaction in the particle in which it affects. Now, in the same way, the mind state, every mind state, so if you get angry, it has an effect on your own mind, it has an effect on the world around you, but it has an effect on a momentary level. So every moment in which we have an intention, that's a karmic act, even before we've acted, because the only reason that you give rise to violent speech or violent acts is because of violent intentions, for example. The basis behind evil actions and speech is evil thought. If a person says something innocently, says something with the intention of bringing a person happiness, but circumstances being what they are, it leads to suffering for that person. Well, some people would believe, well, that's then a bad karma. That person did a bad action, right? Unintentional, but still karmically potent because it had bad results. Buddhism denies this. Buddhism speaks against this. The idea that the result determined the karmic potency, that the physical world determines whether something is karmically potent. You see, so even if one is to do something that seems to have a bad result, Buddhism says it wasn't because of that action. It isn't the person's fault. So when you step on an ant and the ant dies, if you didn't realize there was an ant there and you were being mindful enough to watching where you were going to the extent appropriate, then you're not guilty for the ant's death. Not by that action. So why this works and how this works, this is obviously a controversial topic. So first of all, how this works is an understanding of how happiness and suffering comes, or an understanding of what we mean by karma, or what we mean of being a good deed or a bad deed. In Buddhism, good and bad deeds are such because they bring happiness or suffering to the individual who performs the deeds. According to Buddhism, you can't bring happiness or suffering directly to another being. If I say something, simple example, if I say something nasty to you, it's up to you whether you're going to interpret that as good or bad, and whether you're going to suffer or not because of it. Whether you interpret it simply as sound, or whether you interpret it as words and understand the meaning, or whether you go the next step and say that's bad and I don't deserve that, and attach and cling to it and therefore suffer. Even so far as if a person physically assaults you, it's still in your power to be free from suffering, to not suffer because of that. If your mind is clear, if you're able to see the reality as it is, that this is simply states of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, and thinking. If this, you can see that the pain is just pain, the upset in the body is just a physical experience, then you can still be free from suffering, even if people are quote unquote causing you suffering, or inflicting suffering upon you. So to that extent, we can't measure. There's no, or karma isn't measured based on the results it brings to other people, the suffering or the happiness that it brings to others. What we can do is improve our own state. We can bring our minds to a greater state of peace and happiness, or we can bring our own minds to a state of greater agitation and suffering based on our actions. This is direct. When you get angry, it makes you more of an angry person. When you have greed in the mind, it makes you more of an addictive person. If you're mindful continuously on a regular basis, you become a more mindful person. You become a more peaceful person. Your mind becomes clearer. You become more wise. And if you dedicate yourself to learning, to studying, to examining reality, it makes you a more peaceful, a more content, and a happier person. So these would be good karmas, and the others would be bad karmas. If you're a person who is egotistical, who is conceited, who is arrogant, and so on, this is a cause for your own suffering. It's going to lead you to become more attached and lead to states of experience that are unpleasant. Now, another important aspect of understanding how this works is to understand that karma is not one-to-one. So the idea that my speech, if I say something to you with good intentions and it happens to bring you suffering, it was argued recently that this can bring this can mean that action was an unwholesome action, or was a bad action. Those are bad intentions. When you intend to do something and by chance or for whatever reason it doesn't bring the intended consequence, or it brings an unintended consequence, that this is bad. This is a simplistic understanding of karma, the idea that look at here, you have an action that led to a bad result, and with just a little bit of thought, it's easy to see how this is a simplistic understanding of reality. Obviously, nothing exists in isolation. It's not the case where my speech caused this, my innocent-seeming speech caused this person suffering. There are millions or countless factors that have to be taken into account, and so for this reason, it's important to talk about how karma is not just one-to-one, and in fact there are many different kinds of karma. The first categorization of karma deals with the type of effect that karmic deeds have. So even those deeds that are karmically potent will not all have the effect of bringing a clear and visible result in the here and now. So the first type of karma is that which has this sort of result, where you do something and it has a clear result. If you kill someone, there are clear results that are going to come from it. You'll feel directly worried and guilty and afraid. Your mind will be disturbed directly. You could say you will have you have the police chasing after you. You know, have people wanting to take revenge on you. You'll have a bad name spread about if people find out about it, and so on. So there will be direct consequences to that act. So this is how people normally think of karma, and they would say, when you die from this life, you're born short-lived. So you might be killed yourself in the next life. You might just mysteriously get in a car accident and die, And you might say that that could be a direct consequence of this bad deed you did in a past life. For example, these are all what one would consider to be direct consequences of the deed. But the second type of karma is that which doesn't have an effect itself, but simply augments the effect of another karma. So if you are if you kill a person and you happen to be a known bad guy, you're a known suspect, so you've done other bad deeds or so on before, and they didn't find you out for them, the chances are likely that the police are going to find you out for the new deed. Why? Because the other karma that you did supported that, or was a cause for greater suffering. I mean, that's actually a fairly coarse example, but on a detailed level, this is going on all the time. That the various karmas that we do, if we do a lot of good deeds for people, then it might just take something very small to get us a great positive result. So, for example, if you're very kind to people, and then you apply for an award or a raise or some kind of honor of some sort, much more likely for you to be able to get that honor, that award. Or you do something that is honorable, people are much more likely to give you an award for it if they have some idea that you're already a good person, that you've done good deeds in the past. So point being, all of those other karmas, while they may not have brought any direct result themselves, just being a nice person to people, you see, look, I'm a nice guy, and good things still don't come to me. Why is this happening? Oftentimes is because the effects are not direct themselves, but they provide the basis for other deeds to have stronger or to have more direct results, either good or bad. So certain karmas are just supportive karmas, or have some aspect of them is supportive for other karmas. A third type of karma is in the opposite direction, is those karmas that reduce the effect of other karmas. So if you kill someone, if you do something very nasty, but people respect you, you're a respectable person, you might get away with it. If you've done things to the extent that other people support you. So if you've got a group of people like the mafia, right? Okay, look at the mafia. Mafia, actually, there are good things going on there, right? They're helping each other, so they're building up on a very gross level a basis of protection. You have this mafia head, and he does all sorts of nasty things, but he does a lot of good things for his cronies, so his cronies therefore support him, and that kind of thing. If you do something that is really worthwhile, but you've done bad, you've made a lot of enemies, then on the other hand, the fact that you made a lot of enemies might prevent your good deeds from coming to fruition. And this can of course pass over into the next life as well. Some people do a lot of good deeds, and yet they find people trying to block them at every step. And so the idea being that this is the effect of bad past karma that is preventing good karma from having the result. And this is going on all the time with us. This is why our lives are so mixed. We do good deeds and we say, why aren't they having a direct consequence? Well, you have to take into account moment-to-moment karma over the infinity that is our existence in samsara, to really understand why things are going the way they are. It's such a mix or a matrix of karmas that are at work at every moment that have created this reality. And so to some extent, karma, it isn't something that exists apart from reality. It's just a way of pointing out the probabilities or the patterns that exist in reality. When you see how things work generally, it's sort of a patterned pattern nature. It doesn't just act randomly, but things work. Reality works in patterns, so that the good things that you do have a tendency to bring you to greater happiness. But they still have to interact with other good deeds and bad deeds, so they have to be supported by other wholesome karmas. And so it's really not the point being here, by looking at this, you can see it's not really a mysterious thing. Karma is not something like, wow, how could that be? You kill someone and poof, you die in your next life. There's, it's due to the continuity from one moment to the next, that we create moment after moment, and we have this ripple effect that affects the world around us and affects our future. Okay, so this is the third type, and of course the fourth type is that type of karma which stops effects from occurring. So you might have done something very bad, but then you do something very good, and therefore they cancel each other out, right? I wouldn't go so far as to say you kill someone. It's hard to find something that would cancel it out. But when for example, Angulimala is the greatest example of how karma can be nullified. Angulimala is this guy who killed 999 people, or killed a huge number of people, and would have been on his way to hell based on the guilt and the perversion in his mind. But he became an arahant, and because of becoming an arahant, the greatness of that deed, or the great change that occurred in his mind, it cut off all of that bad karma that would have taken him to hell. Now, of course, he suffered in this life, so there was the effect of karma to some extent. Some of the karma did have some direct effect in terms of causing him to be beaten by the people when he went for alms, and to have people, of course, spread a bad word about him and so on. But the clarity and the purity in his mind was able to completely destroy the karma that would have led him to hell. Mainly, that's not mysterious either. It's just that in his mind there was no feeling of sorrow or worry or fear. He understood that what he had done was totally and completely wrong, and gave it up completely, but had no negative feelings about it in terms of feeling sad or guilty or remorseful, which would have led him to an unwholesome or an unpleasant mind state, and lead him to cling to the existence or the images that would have led him to hell, for example. So this is the first categorization of karma, which I think does a lot to help people to understand in a very simple way how karma is not something magical. It's not like God sitting up in heaven, but it's totally just in that it points out that reality is not, and there's no reason to believe that reality could be chance-based. Reality is based on cause and effect relationships between physical particles and mental states. And the mind states work in a very similar way to the physical reality in terms of cause and effect. Okay, so that's the first categorization. The second categorization is in terms of the order in which they have an effect. So this is starting, because the second aspect of karma is in terms of rebirth. Now, I've talked in other videos about how rebirth works according to Buddhism. Buddhism doesn't believe in reincarnation in terms of a death here and a rebirth somewhere else. Buddhism simply denies the reality of the physical death. That physical death is simply the breakup of something that doesn't really exist in and of itself, or whose existence in and of itself is dependent on the mind in the first place. Without experience, you can't even talk about the physical realm. So to say that physical death is going to destroy the mind is really putting the cart before the horse, or looking at things backwards. You're talking about the cause, or the result destroying the cause, which is not really logical, or not really reasonable. So whatever happens at death, the physical breakup seems to have the effect of disturbing the mind. The mind is sent into some sort of disturbance, but is certainly not destroyed or not vanquished or destroyed as a result. So I've talked about that before. That's not really what I want to talk about. What we want to talk about is how it works when you die, what sort of karmas do lead on to the next life? Because at that point there's nothing physical to create the next moment. What is it that creates the next moment, or what sort of karmas are going to affect you into the next life? And so this is in order of the potency of the karma. So the first type of karma that is going to take effect, that will always override other karmas, is something called weighty or heavy karmas. These are karmas that, according to Buddhism, are stronger and totally override other karmas. So you can be a really, really good and nice and kind person, but if you perform one of the evil, weighty karmas, all of those other karmas are going to be useless. And for example, when you die, you're sure to go to a bad place because of the irrevocable nature of these karmas. That they're total and absolute. They totally destroy, or they destroy your good intentions far beyond the ability of any other karma to go in the opposite direction. So, for example, killing your father, killing your mother, killing an enlightened being. There's not so many of them. Hurting a Buddha, because you could never kill a Buddha. Causing a schism in the Sangha, I believe those are the 5. Causing a schism among the Buddhist disciples. Those 5 things are considered to be impossible to, or irreconcilable in this life. They're so strong that they have to take effect for at least the next life, and most likely, longer. They lead directly to hell. Those are the bad ones. So any other good deed that you've done is useless. Not capable of combating these evil karmas. On the good side are the jhanas or meditative states, where if a person enters into a trance, for example, if a person passes away, or even in this life, if you're in a trance, often bad deeds can be avoided. So there are cases where people would enter into a very powerful trance, and the power of it would allow them to avoid being killed, even in a fire or so on, or allow them to avoid enemies and dangers that they otherwise would have to face. And when you pass away, if a person passes away in one of these trances, then regardless of any other karma that they've done, it leads them to the Brahma worlds, to become a god, or to live in the god realms. So this is on the good side. So on these two sides, this is called weighty karma. These are the karmas that override other karmas. The second type is something that is done immediately, or that is most immediate, the moment before. So a karma that is done right when you're dying, for example, if you're in a fight or something and you kill someone and you're killed, there's a karmic activity at the moment of death, then this is the next in order. If you haven't done anything more weighty than that, if you're engaged in this evil karma, then or good karma, when you die, then this is what's most likely to have the effect and lead you on to the next life, or carry you in the moments after the physical body breaks apart. And of course, even in this life, the good deeds that you do, the bad deeds that you do, at that moment will have the effect first, before other karmas are able to have an effect. So if when you're dying you do a good or a bad deed, you're engaged in meditation, or you're engaged in listening to the Dhamma, for example, or you're engaged in sending loving kindness, all of these things are going to take effect before any others, and the same within the life. So these are called immediate karmas, or something like that. The third one is habitual karmas. So if you're not doing anything karmic when you die and you just happen to pass away, what's most likely to come to mind and to carry you on and to you're most likely to fixate upon that which you've done habitually, instead of fixating on what you're doing at that moment. If there's nothing particular you're doing, then the sorts of things that you've done habitually throughout your life, if it's meditation or charity or listening to studying or listening to the Dhamma, good things like that, then that's what's most likely going to take you on to the next life. If you've habitually done bad things, if you've been mean and nasty or cruel and harmful towards other beings, then that's most likely what's going to come back to your mind. Now, if you haven't done anything habitual, this is the third kind. There's the fourth kind, is just this random karma that you've done, kata kamma that has been done. It means that if you're not a person who has done anything habitually, and you haven't done bad deeds, and you haven't done and when you're dying, if you haven't done any deeds, it can often just be a random karma that you performed. If one time in the past you killed someone, quite likely there's quite a good chance that that's going to be what you fixate on, even though you only did it once. It's something that was most powerful. You can see this in meditation. This is what this is what comes up even in meditation. Of course, the weighty karmas come up first, the immediate karmas come up second, the habitual karmas come up third, and finally just random karmas will pop up in your mind if you did something really bad in the past, and when you're meditating it comes up quite quickly. Another really good reason or purpose of meditation is to clean all this out and to see it all before it comes to be the only thing you've got left. So during meditation these things come up and they can bring you great anguish and suffering if they were bad things. But this is far better than if it'd be the only thing that you can cling to, if it'd be at the moment of death when that's all you've got and your mind clings to and follows it and winds up in a bad destination. So through the meditation you're able to clean this up, and you go through the very same sorts of experiences as if you were passing away, because your mind is focused and you're not acting in the world in a similar way as to when you're dying. But yet, it's innocuous. It's not going to lead you on to create or to be the foundation of the next moments. You've still got the physical reality in this life to support you and sustain you. So something that you can deal with and overcome before it becomes something dangerous or something with the potential to bring to be a large part of your future. This is the second grouping of karmas. The third grouping of karmas is when karma has an effect. So karma doesn't necessarily have an immediate effect, and this is another useful teaching to help explain why karma doesn't seem to work the way we think it does, where you do a good deed and you don't get a good result, you do a bad deed and you don't get a bad result, or you see people who are evil and they're getting lots of good things come to them and so on. This is because, as with all things, the results may not be immediate. They may not be immediately seen. Some karma has a result in this life, so you can see it. You do good deeds for people, for sure, they become more friendly towards you. In fact, this is really... It really is the case with most karma. It's just that we aren't looking closely enough. We expect to see things like fireworks exploding, but at the same time there are very real effects that we don't see because we're not observant enough. When you help people, when you're nice to people, often what happens is you've done nasty things to people in the past, and then you think, well, I'll go and be nice to them, and you go and be nice to them, and they're really rude to you. Why are they rude to you? Because of the deeds that you've done in the past. So then you think, well, that was useless, and you think, well, that person, there's no use helping them. I tried, and so I guess I'll just be mean to them. And next time you come, they're nice to you. Why? Because you were nice to them, but you're mean to them again, and so on. We get easily discouraged in this way due to impatience and due to a misunderstanding about the nature of karma. So as a result, we often miss the potential, or we miss the results, and we don't realize that we have actually impacted the world around us. We have actually helped ourselves through the karma. It has actually had a beneficial result. because we're not looking closely enough and we're expecting perhaps more or on a different level than what is actually occurring. But it is something that has very much a basis in reality. You do good deeds, good things do come from them. You just might not see them. So if you have good intentions and they don't bring about a good result, they in fact seem to bring about a bad result. You're not looking closely enough. You're not seeing exactly what your good intentions brought about. You're expecting too much. You're expecting things on a different level, when in fact it may very well be that the next moment or the next day or so on that good results come from these good intentions and the good deeds that are based on the good intentions. So, but at any rate, there are certain kinds of karma, or certain karmas will give results in this life. Certain karmas will give rise in the next life. So at the moment of death, they might come up and they lead you to be born somewhere based on the prominence of those deeds, or the remembrance of those deeds at the moment of death. And they might have an effect in that next life, based on the connection. And this is obviously next most common because of the connection between this life and the next life. But the third type of karma in this categorization is ones that don't have a result in this life or the next life, but have a result sometime in some future existence. Could be any time. So it is possible that the results are so indirect that they only have a result in some future existence. Now this is said to be the case with certain people who come to practice meditation, or come to ordain in the time of the Buddha, or practice meditation in the time of the Buddha. For some people it was really easy to practice meditation, and the Buddha said, well, that's because they had practiced meditation many lifetimes ago, in a previous Buddha, under a previous Buddha, or even just by themselves. They had done something that allowed them to see the truth of life, or see some sort of truth of life that gave them an advantage over other people, gave them a head start in the meditation practice, and as a result it was very easy for them to become enlightened. Other people, it's very difficult to become enlightened. Some people were actually, in the time of the Buddha, unable to become enlightened because of things they had done far in the past. Even the Buddha himself, the reason he is said to have tortured himself for 6 years before he became enlightened, this is apparently not how it usually goes with a bodhisattva. When a bodhisattva, one who is going to become a Buddha, leaves home, it only takes them normally 1 night to become enlightened. That's how it normally occurs, because they're already ready for it. Now, our Buddha is said to have taken 6 years because in some past life, many lifetimes ago, he had insulted a Buddha, a private Buddha, someone who was enlightened, who had become enlightened by themselves, saying that he was torturing himself. That, oh, look at this misguided man who has gone off and tortured himself in the forest. How useless of him, something like that. And so he gave rise to this wrong view, and because of that, he had the wrong view in his past life, thinking, okay, now I want to do it, I must follow this sort of path, even though he didn't realize that he had done that in a past life. This mind state carried on, and when he started thinking about it, what clicked in his mind was the idea that he would have to go and torture himself. And so as a result, this is how the commentaries put it. But this is the theory, and this is how we understand karma to work. It may not have a result because the mind is able to keep the sort of idea in it, from moment to moment, because each moment is based on the last. And so that by the time the idea of something comes up, it is still very much based on these old karmas that we perform. The mind is really that complex, and reality is really that complex. The fourth type of karma in this categorization is those types of karma that are called ahosi kamma, which may mean karmas that don't have the opportunity to give a result. So it may be that you do something and it just never has the opportunity to come to fruition. Maybe it's cut off by other karmas, or maybe it just happens to not find an outlet, not find a way of bringing a result. But some teachers will just say it means that this means the karmas that have already had a result. So certain karmas are ahosi, meaning ahosi means was. The meaning here is then that it's something that it's a has-been. It's a karma that has already given its result. So certain karmas are now defunct. They have given their result and will never give a result again. So that's called the 12 types of karma, 3 groups of 4. And I think that's important. I mean, I know it's a little bit technical, and for non-Buddhists especially, it's kind of far-fetched in some ways. Still the idea of future lives and so on. For many people, it's a hard thing to grasp because they're so caught up in this belief that the physical death actually means something more than it actually does. So still, I think it's useful to get a grasp of the idea that karma is much more complex than we normally think of it. It's certainly not one-to-one. It should be obvious if you think about it for a bit that of course it has to be like this, that karmas couldn't just magically bring their results. They have to interact just as everything else just as the physical universe does. They have to interact with other karmas and other realities, and so we wind up with a very complex matrix of karma and of deeds. But so that one important thing. The other important thing to understand is that certainly karma is simply those intentions that are volitional, that you intend to hurt someone, or you have the idea, you have bad intentions towards other beings, you have good intentions towards other beings, you have some ethical volition in the mind. This is called karma. Now, the final thing I would say about karma is that it's not really the core of the Buddhist teaching. The point of the Buddhist teaching actually is to overcome karma. An enlightened being doesn't perform karma, not even good karma. They do a lot of deeds that appear to be good, but they simply do them out of, you almost would say habit, but simply because it's appropriate to do, simply because there's nothing better that they could possibly do. They wouldn't have any reason to create the kind of disharmony that is caused by unwholesome, or that is required to perform an unwholesome karma. Good deeds are actually the more simple thing to perform to some extent. Now, they wouldn't. The other point is that they wouldn't go out of their way to perform good deeds. They wouldn't have the idea that, oh, may this bring some result, or hoping to help other beings. They won't go out of their way to do that. If they're invited to teach, they will simply teach, and they will do it without any feeling of a concern for their own well-being or attachment to their own happiness and their own pleasure. So as a result, they can often seem to be quite intent upon good deeds and self-sacrificing. But it's because they have no attachment to self, so they have no need to turn down the offer or the hopes of other people. So when other people want their help, they will do it within the confines of what is reasonable, what is appropriate, and so on. But the point being that karma actually is just another teaching to help us to understand the nature of reality on an experiential level. So when people say they can't believe in karma, they're really, with that statement, they're misunderstanding what is the meaning of karma. Karma is a moment-to-moment aspect of reality. It has to do with the cause and effect relationship of every moment. The reason why we suffer is because of karma, because we have bad intentions. When you cling to something, that's a bad intention. That's a karma that leads to suffering. When you have anger in your mind, this is something that leads to suffering, or it is suffering. The anger is something that is unpleasant in and of itself. So even a person who practices meditation properly for just a few days will come to understand what the Buddha meant by karma, will come to understand how the mind works causally. It works moment to moment in a cause and effect manner. So mind states affect future mind states. That's how karma works. So not something difficult to understand, not something mysterious or hard to explain or hard to understand, but something impossible to pin down. So you couldn't say this karma is going to lead to that result. The Buddha said no, I think he said that it's outside of the realm of anyone, or it's only in the realm of a Buddha. Only a fully enlightened Buddha, someone who we understand, completely understands, or has completely purified their mind to the extent that they are able to understand the workings of the universe, could tell you which karmas lead to which results. It's just so complex. I mean, think of how complicated it is to predict the weather, for example, or to predict the future of physical particles. You know, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, I think, says it's impossible. So we just predict probabilities. And the same, of course, because it's part of reality, the same, of course, goes for karma. It's something that you can't really predict. You can't say doing this bad deed will lead to this bad result. All you can say is that bad deeds lead to bad results. If they have a result, it will be bad. And the Buddha was actually quite careful about this, because if you say that a bad deed will lead to a bad result, then the Buddha said, well, then you have no way out of bad deeds, right? If a bad deed always leads to a bad result, then there's no way to be free from suffering. But he said, but if you say that the result of a bad deed will have to be bad, then you leave room for a way out of suffering, because it may not lead to a result, or it may be cut off by good deeds, which prevent it from bringing about the bad result, and so on. So, most important lessons: one, that karma is much more complicated and based on reality than people think, and two, that karma is it's the freedom from karma. It's something that we come to overcome, and we come to give up the desire to create karma. That is most important. Karma is a momentary thing that should be a part and parcel of our meditation practice, coming to realize the futility of, or the meaninglessness or the purposelessness of performing bad deeds, and eventually of even intentionally performing good deeds, to the extent that we're able to just give up and let things go as they will, and interact with reality rather than react to it, or desire to build up, to let go and to tear down, to give up rather than to build up and to create artificial structures, either physically or mentally. So I hope that helps people understand a little bit clearer about karma. Of course, the only way you're really going to understand karma is if you practice. It's not going to come from any sort of study or teaching. So anyway, hope that has encouraged you towards that, because another thing to encourage a little bit more is that this is a truth of reality. If you still have these bad intentions in your mind, then no amount of abstaining from this or that deed is going to save you. Even in your mind, if your mind is full of anger and full of greed, you are already setting yourself up for suffering in the future. If not in this life, then in the future life. So something that should really, really encourage us to cultivate the meditation practice and to seriously put out effort to purify our minds and to come to understand this and come to see the futility or the disadvantages of clinging, of craving, of creating karma of any sort. Okay, so thanks for tuning in. Here we go. This is hopefully this won't be the end of it, and I'll be able to continue on doing more videos like this. Of course, we have the Dhammapada series, which I'm keen to get back into. It might take another week or two to get set up, but I'll try my best to get back as quickly as possible to making more videos. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for everyone who's kept up and sends their comments and so on. Look forward to seeing you all on our live video chats that we'll be doing, hopefully again Saturdays and Sundays, and who knows, we might be also doing daily meditation sessions. Look for that on my YouTube channel. Anyway, thanks for tuning in.